Hey guys, it's Drew again. Today I want to go through a little bit of my binder experience back when I used to do TTMing. So let's check it out. So back around 2012 to about 2014, I did a lot of TTMing. And if you don't know, TTMing means through the mail, which is an autograph request. I'd send off a card and a request to a player, baseball player, and just say, would you sign this? And just like any kind of hobby or anything else, it began to evolve and grow. And I was flipping through my binder this morning and I thought, you know what? I want to share some of the things and how I evolved in it. I'm not saying this works. It worked for me and it worked back then. It may not work this way anymore. I really don't know. I haven't done it in years. But it's still fun to look back and just remember the stuff. So I kept every single thing I have TTM in a binder, and I've got cards and letters and pictures and everything else. And I wanted to kind of share what I had. So in the very back, what I would do is I actually kept a record of every single person I ever sent a request to, and I still have them all. You can see their names, you can see the date I sent, you can see if I received it back. How long it took to receive them back. Was it a success? What did they do? And it was just kind of interesting. It's sort of like back when spreadsheets were just done on paper. This is what I did. And I've got all the things, and it's kind of fun just for me personally to look back through this memory to see what it is. And the other thing I did was I kept a notebook of addresses, and I would find the addresses online, and you can see, you know, all different addresses, their success rate, what they would sign, how much they would charge, if they would charge, was it a free autograph? And it's kind of cool to see so many addresses of all these guys that I sent to. So the very first one that I ever sent off, and I've shared this before, was Carl Erskine. And I knew who Carl Erskine was. He wasn't one of my key guys at this point, but I did know who he was as far as history, being on the Brooklyn Dodgers back in the golden era in the 50s. But what I did was I wrote him a letter and, you know, just said, be honored if you would consider signing my card. And then I asked him some questions because I really wanted to kind of personalize it, not just say, can I get a signature? And so I'm going to read the questions I did, and because I find this interesting. And I said, what was the person you hated to face the most in a tight game? And he said, Stan Musial was the best hitter in my day, which is kind of cool. What was the greatest thrill of your baseball career? 1953 World Series, setting the strikeout record, World Series 14 against the Yankees. And if you know anything about that and my personal piece with that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if not, you got to dig through my old videos to find out. Who was the best team you ever played for or against? And all he said was the best was the 1953 Dodgers. 55 Dodgers were the greatest. And then he did sign my card. He signed my letter. He signed my card. And that was cool. And the other one that I sent off at the same time was Billy Pierce. And I asked the same types of questions. Toughest team he ever faced was the Yankees. The player who we hated to come against in a tight game, he said Ted Williams, which I think is cool. Like Dylan, big Ted Williams fan, so you know Billy Pierce. And what was the greatest memory you had? Winning a sixth game of the 1962 World Series, which is so cool. And he actually signed an index card that I had included. What I find interesting about him is I sent him a 1952 Bowman card, and he signed it beautifully. But it's amazing that this 52 Bowman card and his signature in 2012 is identical. Like, it just didn't change over the years. If you look at the facsimile signature and then you look, and it's just really cool. But one thing about me personally is I am lazy, and I was like, oh, handwriting all these letters out was a pain, you know, and you know, my time is valuable, blah 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 blah. But the point is that I got lazy, so then I started sending out these very brief things. Like I sent this one to Bob Aspermani, and I just said, well, you know, I'd appreciate it if you'd sign this card, which he did. Great signature. I've actually done a video on Bob Aspermani, and that was really cool. And then I thought, you know, I really do like the questions. I really liked having the questions, and I didn't ask any from Bob Aspermani, but I did want to do the questions. So I started doing questions again, and here's a really cool one that I got from Dick Grote, and he signed an index card, a great 1954 Topps card. I've shown this off before when he passed away last year. And but then I decided, you know what, I got to do something different. So what I did was I cheated. I'm just going to be honest with you. I cheated. And what I did was I wrote a letter, hand wrote a letter on a piece of paper. This is actually a copy of it. And if you can see up closely, oh man, whatever. I thought it was so smart. I would start it out and it just said, Dear Mr. Blah. And then I had, my name is Drew and I'm working on this request, blah, blah, blah. And I had the 3 questions, and then I photocopied this actual thing. And when I went to do a request, all I did, because it was the same thing over and over, the questions were vague enough to sound specific for the player, but they were really could be applicable for any player. And I would take this copy, so this is an extra one that I never sent out, and then I would just write in the last name, Dear Mr. Jones or Smith or whoever it was, and I would put the card, and I always had an index card just in case. Some guys signed them, some guys didn't. But here's the really cool thing I wanted to share is I want to start showing off some of the responses to these guys, because not everybody you sent to is a Hall of Famer and the big names, and you're like, oh my gosh, they did this and that. It's guys you never heard of. It's the bench players and the second stringers and the guys that just had a cup of coffee or whatever. And I love to hear those responses almost more than I love to hear the guys that everything about. And so the 3 questions that I would ask is, who was the toughest player you hated to face in a tough spot? And number 2 was, what's the greatest thrill of your playing career? And the third one, which was my favorite question that I like to ask, was, what's something that you remember about your career that most people don't? And that's the question that had so much fun. So I want to share a couple of these things, because I pulled out this page, and I think it's interesting, because what I would do is I would take these things and I would put a response if they did it, and I would put it in there, and then I could flip through my book, what I already showed you. And this one was interesting because on both sides it's kind of something interesting in the way that they answered the question. So the first one was to Bob Friend, and Bob Friend played for the primarily for the Pittsburgh Pirates in the 60s, and the toughest player, not surprisingly, he said was Hank Aaron, Stan Musial. And actually, for National League players, Stan Musial was one of the hardest. It was the most named person, and the most named person as a hitter was Sandy Koufax. So it doesn't surprise me when you kind of think about that through history. The greatest thrill was he played for a World Series championship team, 1960 Pirates, which we've already mentioned. And this is the cool question. What's something you remember about your career most people don't? I pitched for 14 years without missing any starts. And I think that is so cool that he did that. And then he signed my card. He put down that he was a 4-time All-Star and an ERA champ in 1955, and on a little index card, and that's cool. And on the back, it's funny because I really didn't intend to do this as a Pirates theme, but why not? It's a Pirates theme. But on the back I sent a 1972 card of Dave Cash, who played for the Pirates a little later on. And let's see, who was the toughest player? He said, it's tough to say because there was a lot of good pitchers, so he was kind of vague on that. What was the greatest thrill? Winning the 1971 World Series. And something you remember, and this was a really cool response, was he had over 690 at-bats with only 13 strikeouts. And you can see it right there. And it was just really cool that he did that. And then, of course, signed my letter. And anyway, I just wanted to share some of these things, and maybe I can do more, just kind of randomly pick out. And there were so many great responses. Some of them were kind of vague. Some guys didn't do much. I've already showed off some of the Hall of Famers. If they only sent back a signed card, I just put those in the front, and I've got some really great ones. And it was just a lot of fun. It was a different point in my collecting career, was doing through the mail autographs, and I really enjoyed it. And I know a lot of you guys out there really enjoy these things, and to kind of see how it was and how it is, and it's a lot of fun. It's just a different aspect of collecting, and the older I get and the more experience I get into collecting, the more I realize I don't want to be pigeonholed in one kind of thing, but I need to stay focused at least within some kind of limit, because it just can get so overwhelming. I love these magazines that I've got, but I'm not a magazine collector. I do have autographs that I've never really showed them off outside of my through the mail, but I'm not an autograph collector. I'm primarily a card collector, except I'm not adding any cards to my collection, so I don't know what I am. I guess I'm a baseball enthusiast who really enjoys having some really cool items. Stuff like this back here, that Red Heart advertisement, which I got from some really generous people in this community. I love it, and I love this hobby. I love going to shows. I love dealing with people and seeing you guys tell my stories and everything else. So sorry for the ramble. I'm just having a good time in this hobby. So you guys out there, I appreciate everything that you always do, and like always, you be good.